putting together these pieces, and that's how the whole system got off. Now we've got all this infrastructure. Nobody knows how it was here. And it is true, like it's easy to build green electricity now. By the way, it's easy because we have one provider and they're the single off taker. Nobody goes and builds a wind farm to sell to individual buildings, right? Like nobody's going to build a wind farm for one building downtown, right? So I just feel like it's a lot of, vested interests, like people who already have these networks, they're very fearful. And, to be frank, they should be. I don't think the gas network knows what its future is. And I think that there's a role for the gas network, but I don't think it's what it is currently. And it's a very hard existential thing. So I think that, I'm sure a lot of that comment would have come from people, two types. One is people who want a lot of agency, and it's like, I'm the developer and I'm the building, and screw the rest of, but we don't do that with anything else. Like we don't let them build any kind of architecture. We don't let them build a septic system in the middle of the city, right? So I think it's just that we haven't realized that energy isn't just a private good anymore in the face of climate change. Maybe once we've made the whole transition and we've weaned fossil fuels out of the system, it will start to look a little bit like it does now, where it's more privately driven. But we're in this huge transition phase, and I don't know how you get from here to there without, some of these, looking at larger scales. And yeah, I think that the whole building conversation is the most frustrating thing in my experience, right? Because, we're not going to solve climate change building by building, unfortunately. And what it does is also we build these really deep green buildings, and we're not doing anything for all the infrastructure around these single buildings. And we're not regulating. Vancouver hasn't regulated existing buildings yet. I mean, they've been talking about it for 10 years. New York City is the only one who's started regulating existing buildings. So I don't know. We can get all philosophical. I just, it's not either or. And also a lot of this is temporary. Like if once we built the networks, we can have more choices and all that, but you're not going to get somebody to build a network with just everybody. We wouldn't have the sewer systems in Paris if everybody had just gone and thought independently, right? So I think that there's just some things that have to be thought of as a community. And I'm personally of the view that, heat, we've made almost zero progress on heat globally. So that's your answer there. If it's so good, green buildings have been, you do all the modeling. We're nowhere near where we need to be. So sorry, I gotta go off. No, because I can hear who you're talking to.
I can imagine. But those are, those people are everywhere, and there are some valid points. And the discussion about what role the city should have, or government in general should have, I think is a valid discussion that should be had. With the corollary that also means what the role of the private sector should be can also be questioned time and time again. But this relates a bit to issues of checks and balances, which you mentioned before. And with the checks and balances, there's potential conflicts of interest that I've in my conversations. That's how I've labeled it. One of which is between planning and engineering. You suddenly, the moment you have ownership and you own a business, suddenly you can have an engineering department that wants to expand its district energy system and to reduce emissions, and you have a planning department that wants to reduce the energy intensity of buildings to reduce emissions, and those go in conflict because one challenges the business model of the other one, and this is just one of the many conflicts of interest that arise with ownership in particular. So is that something that was identified and discussed? Is that a relevant conflict of interest? Are there others that we should be more aware of?
I'm not sure that it's a conflict of interest when, we always, the problem is that we haven't we haven't